Throughout the course of the Innisphere, there have been many monsters and iconic mechs which have captured the hearts of countless people, both in and out of the universe. Whether that be through the fearsome AC-20 might of the King Crab, the iconic Atlas, the clan's murderous Mad Cat, or even mechs such as the Irby. And even then, there are so many other mechs which have captured the hearts of people through their looks, their loadout, or simply through their lore. There are many of these mechs, and despite this, there are many other designs which are often overlooked by the fandom, whether that be through not having as much spotlight, or simply they came out at the wrong time. And so today we're going to talk about one of my favorite monsters, a true menace and destructive force on the battlefield. So today we're going to go into Defiance Industries clan killing mech, the Berserker. To understand the history of the Berserker, you first need to go back to the Third Succession War, specifically around the time of the 3020s. At this point in time, the winds of change were very much starting to come. While everything was still very stagnant, things would soon be changing, as it wouldn't take long for only a mere decade later, two full-on new wars would start and end. Countless new technology would also be rediscovered. But that was not yet. Defiance Industries, as well as their partner, the New Avalon Research Institute, they most likely knew about this change that was to come. So they decided to be the precipice of this change. And they would create a brand new battle mech. At this time, there were no new battle mechs. Sure, there are new models and variants of classic mechs, which had existed for over hundreds of years, but they wanted to make something totally brand new. So, in 3023, the very first brand new battle mech, the HCT-3F Hatchetman, was born. While many in the periphery will claim that the Merlin was the first, they are from the periphery. The Innisphere does not care about that. The Hatchetman is a surprisingly conservative mech, especially given its point of origin, being Defiance Industries, located within the Lyran Commonwealth. That is because the Lyran Commonwealth is commonly stereotypically referred to as just using assault mechs. And while this is a stereotype which is not exactly true, it still does hold some weight, mainly because they still do love their assault mechs. Regardless, this is still a surprisingly conservative build, as it is only 45 tons. It was only armed with an AC-10 and 2 medium lasers, with the AC-10 giving it some decent range. For mobility, it had a cruising speed of 43 kph and a top speed of 64 kph, or 4.6 on the tabletop. It also installed 4 jump jets, giving a total jump distance of 120 meters, or 4 hexes on the tabletop. Everything else was standard as per the time, but it did have 2 brand new technologies. Mainly, its full head ejection system, which will allow the head to fly off and potentially head back to friendly lines. But most importantly, it had a hatchet. This hatchet could allow it to potentially cut up other mechs, while on tabletop it only does 9 damage, or 1 less compared to the AC-10. But this was still, especially in lore, a very powerful weapon, and it was the first mech that truly capitalized on a means of warfare that many may look down upon, mainly melee combat. This may be largely due to its brutal close-up nature, with mechs punching, kicking, bashing, or even the iconic death from above. But this was the first fully dedicated melee weapon, fully embracing the brutal close quarters combat that was a natural occurrence within the inner sphere. However, this mech was not without flaws, as it only had 6.5 tons of standard armor, or 104 points. This does mean that it was particularly vulnerable if you could get a good shot off. Additionally, it did not have a lot of speed, making it even more vulnerable with that much armor. The jump jets would try to help, but would be ultimately futile in a full-on engagement. In open areas, this thing would be torn to shreds. With this thing would only truly be effective in urban environments, but in the end, at its time, it was still good enough, and it would prove to be a very popular mech, especially on the open market, with many of their allies would receive this mech, including the brand new Federated Commonwealth. But Defiance Industries was not done yet, for in 3048, another mech would soon come off the assembly line, being the AXM-1N Axman. At this point in time, the third succession war was over, the fourth succession war, and the war of 3039 had all come and gone. The Federated Commonwealth was now in full swing, and military buildup on all the great houses was rampant, as all of them knew there would soon be a new war, a new and truly brutal war, partially spurred on because the Grey Death Legion and their sharing of the Hell Memory Core, technology that was long thought gone and extinct, was now returning, and it was returning rapidly. And the Axman would be to capitalize that. It was supposed to be the Hatchetman, but bigger. With a total of extra 20 tons, the Axman is basically the Hatchetman, but 20 tons heavier. Its AC-10 was upscaled to an AC-20. It was given an extra medium laser, and a large pulse laser was also installed. It would have the same speed and jumping distance of the Hatchetman, but it would be given more advanced technology, with 10 tons of ferrofibrous armor giving it 179 points, which is decent-ish for its weight class at the time. However, its biggest weakness would be its engine, as unlike the Hatchetman, this thing would install an XL engine, making it very vulnerable should it lose side torso. It's because Inner Sphere XL engines have a problem in the fact that installing one results in 3 engine criticals in each of the side torsos, and should a mech take 3 engine critical hits, the mech will be considered destroyed. Thus, if it loses a side torso, it will take 3 engine criticals, destroying the mech, while the Axman would install a case to help mitigate the potential explosive death of ammunition explosion, one that the Hatchetman knew all too well. All the case would be to preserve the mech, but it would not stop destruction due to the XL engine. And yet, despite all these flaws, the Axman would be a somewhat decent mech, at least against the Inner Sphere, as it was designed to fight the Inner Sphere. Not designed to fight any foreign invaders, designed to fight those in the Inner Sphere. However, this would not come to pass. While the Axman may have performed quite well against the other great houses, especially its native urban environments, what really happened was that it would be forced into the meat grinder that was the raging inferno of the clan invasion, where up against the clans, this mech's weaknesses were made all too profound. The clan mechs are faster, more maneuverable, had better weapons, better range, better everything. The Axman and the Hatchetman, for up-close brawlers, were horrendously outmatched and outgunned against these invaders from beyond. Yet, even throughout this darkness, the Axman and Hatchetman would still prove their keep and show a particular weakness. This was most likely discovered by the Kriegsmarine of the Free Rasslag Republic, largely due to the fact that these guys love their hatchets and purchase a large amount of Hatchetman and Axman. And these people would discover that the clans had a particular aversion to melee combat. This was because the clans found melee dishonorable and generally disliked melee as a whole, and so the shock and awe of engaging them at close quarters with their axes could potentially give them the win. In many cases, it would. It would be a major boon, because this was the only real advantage the Innisphere had against their clan opponents. And so, with this knowledge, Defiance Industries was set out to create the ultimate melee mech. A mech that would rule the melee, that would be the king of melee combat. It would take them many years of trial and error and development, with many speculating this thing would never get off the drawing board. And yet, as if to prove them wrong, in 3056, the brand new BRZ-A3 Berserker would roll off the assembly line for the first time. When designing the Berserker, Defiance Industries had several things they needed to fix when compared to their previous models, especially since this Berserker, this new mech, was intended to fight the clans. First, they needed to increase its survivability. They also need to increase its speed. Weaponry would not be terribly important, but they did need to increase the range. In order to give it the max amount of speed a 100-ton assault mech can have, they installed a 400 XL engine. This engine, the 400 XL, is the biggest and most expensive engine ever. And while for other mechs this can potentially push them into an insane speed, for the Berserker only gives it the same speed as the Axman and Hatchetman. Mask would be installed to give a temporary speed of 84 kph or 8 hexes in the tabletop, but this comes with downside that this thing can and will break if overtaxed. Thus, it should only be used in the event of an emergency or if desperately needed. While the XL did make it inherently more vulnerable, this would be countered with the help of 18.5 tons of standard armor, or 296 points, making it just 8 points shy of your standard Atlas. Additionally, in order to further improve its survivability, Guardian ECM mounted within the right torso will be installed, potentially giving this a bit of a sneaking effect, as well as allowing it to disable the effects of Artemis guided missiles. AMS would also be installed, with it and its ammunition being stored within this center torso, allowing it to shoot down incoming missiles, further improving its survivability. While the ammunition can theoretically explode, AMS ammo does not do a lot of damage should it take a critical hit and explode. To further complement this mech, an endosteel structure would be installed, shaving off a total of 5 tons. Innisphere endosteel, however, does take up 14 critical slots, but fortunately this mech does not need to worry too much about that. For weaponry, it was given an ERPPC with giving it excellent range and firepower, even if it should be in open environments. Once the mech closes in, it's supposed to turn off its ERPPC in favor of its twin large pulse lasers, split between their right and left torso. Pulse lasers have a special effect where they apply a -2 to their to-hit roll. Thus, at long range, they act as if they're firing at medium range. Medium range, they act as if they're firing at short range. In short range, it's going to be a heck of a lot easier to hit them. Finally, a flamer was mounted within the head. This was actually part of the reason why it took so long to get off the drawing board, as the designers took several years to perfectly mate the head with the flamer, giving it a potentially intimidating effect of the head belching flames at its opponent, potentially making it an extremely terrifying effect as it charges into its clan opponents, with the hopes that this would cause him to stutter or hesitate, a potentially fatal move against his mech. Flamerers would also give it the added benefit of being able to toast some infantry should it feel the need to do some light war crimes on the side. But the biggest star of the show would be, of course, its 7-ton hatchet within the right arm. This was the biggest and most powerful hatchet ever created, and as of now, it is still the biggest and most powerful hatchet. This hatchet could do a total of 20 damage, as much as an AC-20, making this thing an extremely powerful weapon should it close the range of melee. But it does have some flaws, mainly due to its lack of jump jets, making it far harder to maneuver in urban environment. Its 16 double heat sinks do provide an adequate job of maintaining its heat balance, but don't expect it to hold should it engage in an alpha strike on a full run. All in all, the A3 is a good mech. While it definitely is a clan killing mech should it get into range, it is not, however, perfect. It still has many flaws. It's not terribly fast, doesn't have any jump jets, but those are the only real flaws. Unless you also count the fact that this thing cost a whopping 32 million C-bills, which would be about the same amount as 3 AS-7S Atlases, making this an extremely expensive mech. Yet this would be extremely popular, especially among the Lyran half of the Federated Commonwealth and the Kriegsmarine, as this was marketed, rightfully, as the king of melee combat. This mech would, however, see a handful of different models. The B3 model would be produced around the same year and would be an extremely unpopular, largely due to the fact that it replaces its large pulse lasers for twin LRM-10s with ammunition. This is by no stretch of the imagination an extremely unpopular design, as it turns this mech into a mediocre at best fire support mech when there are countless other options, including the Salamander. Not to mention the fact that the B3 was also ludicrously expensive. It's more than likely that this model was an attempt to recreate another popular Axman model, which replaces AC-10 for twin LRM-15s with ammunition. But while that thing is smaller and cheaper, as well as providing more missiles, this thing would ultimately too expensive and not nearly as good for what it offered, as there were better long-range fire support mechs compared to the B3. Yet the A3 would still see prominent use against the clan invaders, and when placed in more close quarters urban environments, this thing would excel, taking down many clan mechs. Not even the famous Man-Cat could stand up to this monster should it close the distance. It is best seen thanks to Overst Gordon Jorgensen of the Free Rasslag Republic's 3rd Drakons. During an unsanctioned raid against Clan Wolf, his unit would lose the commander, forcing him into command. Channeling the Berserker mentality of his mech, he would personally down multiple Clan Wolf Omni mechs and most likely second line battle mechs before pulling out with the rest of his unit. Naturally, Jordan would fall in love with the Berserker and his hatchet wielding antics, and would soon requisition more Berserkers as well as Hatchetman and Axman to further augment the Berserker and its deadly hatchet. And yet the Berserker would also see combat throughout the Fedcom Civil War, as this thing would fighting on both sides of the Civil War, even fighting against mechs this was supposed to be supported by, like the Salamander. And when this thing inevitably closed the distance, the mighty Salamander could do nothing but wait for the inevitable. Others would try, in desperate attempt to try to fistfight this monster, but no one can stop the Berserker once it gets up close. For this is the king of melee combat. And yet, it could be better. And it would be better. For in 3067, the brand new BRZ C3 would roll off the assembly line. And this mech, as a new model, it did all the things right. For starters, this thing would downgrade the engine to a LTV 400 light engine. Not only would this shave off 6 million C-bills, making this mech cheaper, but it would also give the added benefit of survivability, as a light engine acts a lot like a Clan XL. While a light engine only shaves off 25% of the weight compared to XL's 50%, the light engine takes up only 2 criticals on each of the side torsos, just like a Clan XL, meaning that should this mech lose its side torso, this mech can and still will fight or pull back if needed. Additionally, the large pulse lasers would be replaced for 6 ER medium lasers split between the left and right torso. But its biggest change would be the removal of the mask in favor of triple strength Myanmar. For those who don't know what triple strength Myanmar is, at first it may seem useless, but should a mech intentionally gets up to 9 heat, the triple strength Myanmar will activate. Now, the important thing for triple strength Myanmar is they must maintain at 9 heat. If you go any higher, you will lose some of the bonuses. But no matter how hot you get, if you're at 9 heat or above, triple strength Myanmar will stay active. What triple strength Myanmar does is that it increases the walking MP by 2, with running MP recalculated as normal. But since you're at 9 heat and heat modifiers also applied, some practice means you only get a +1 walking MP. However, this is still a major boon as it turns this mech from a 468 to a 58 should triple strength Myanmar be online. In other words, with triple strength Myanmar on, this thing can match the speed of the infamous Mad Cat. This would also make this mech the fastest assault mech ever, and would allow it to quickly close in and outrun many of the other assault mechs. It maintains speed with many Clan medium and heavy mechs. Additionally, triple strength Myanmar also does one extra thing, and that is all melee damage is doubled. Thus, with triple strength Myanmar on, the hatchet does a whopping 40 damage against its targets, and that's to a single point, making it the most deadly and destructive weapon in all Battletech. Even assault mechs would whimper at the mere thought of being hit at a single location for 40 damage. This Berserker will be a massive improvement compared to its predecessors, and will be a true king of melee. And yet, this thing is also a team player, as it sacrifices one heatsink in order to mount a C3 slave system, allowing it to be hooked up to a C3 network. This means that when running a C3 unit, this Berserker can be even more powerful, as it can relay data towards allies, allowing them to rain down fire from long range, softening them up, so that when this Berserker closes in, you better believe something is going to go horribly wrong for whomever that hatchet hits. This is most likely the mech that will be given over to Gavin Hastings, who was given the nickname Hacker. While it's not said what mech he originally used, we can assume that it might have been a Hatchetman, or possibly even an Axman. Regardless, he would soon be scouted for one of the top stables in Solaris, the Silver Dragon Stable by Marcus Neville. This was a very top of the line stable on Solaris 7, and they would give him a fresh off the line Berserker, most likely the C3 variant. This would be a mech that Hastings would soon show its full fury and brutality when he went up against Richard Fulton, known as Fury in 3066, haste into fighting Fulton's Juggernaut throughout what can only be described as a holographic kaleidoscope of terrain in the boreal reaches. The Berserker would move in throughout the terrain, taking potshots at the Juggernaut when opportunity is provided. Juggernaut would also provide fire, but the Berserker's armor would be more than enough to eat whatever fire it took. Hasten's determination would soon bring him in closer and closer, shutting off fire while also dodging. Once the service admirer online, it was even worse there for Fulton, as he found it harder and harder to keep track with this 100-ton behemoth, which could move at the speed of many iconic medium and heavy mechs. It wouldn't take long, but soon Hackings would close the distance and show why he was known as the Hacker. When in one blow, Hatchet would slam into the Juggernaut, tearing off everything and going straight into the Juggernaut, ending the fight in a single blow. This famous Hatchet ending would soon grace the main titles of many popular mech talk shows. But the story of the Berserker is not over yet, for it had one more model that would be created in the Dark Age. And while the C3 is definitely a massive improvement compared to the A3, while also not changing too much, the D4 follows in line with the C3, attempting to improve it in many ways, while also not diverting from its true purpose of close-in melee combat. So, in 3112, the BRZ D4 will be released to the public, and based on its loadout and equipment, it's my firm belief that this would be originally intended for the arenas of Solaris 7, for those who could afford it at least, as well as for the Lyran Alliance or Commonwealth. For starters, this thing is by far the most expensive mech, largely due to its XL engine, but it's not an Inspire XL. Instead, it's a clan grade XL engine with only 2 critical locations on each of the side torsos. This is a very expensive, largely due to being a clan sourced engine. Most likely this was bought from Clan Seafox, most likely at a very high price, but it's a price well worth it. For additional changes, it would also mount a compact gyro with armoring. This means that should the gyro take a critical hit, the armoring will take a critical hit, thus needing 2 critical hits on a single location in order to destroy the gyro, which does improve its survivability. Additionally, in order to shave off weight while also not taking up too much critical locations, Endo Composite would be installed. Just like a light engine, this only shaves off 25% of the weight of the internal structure, but it only takes up 7 critical slots compared to the usual 14. However, one of the biggest changes besides the XL engine would be its impact resistant armor, with a total of 21 tons, the armor weighing slightly more than a Locust. It would only give it 294 points of total protection, just 2 short of the original Berserker models. However, impact resistant armor does give it a special ability, being that it halves all melee damage. So even the deadly 40 damage of a triple shaded Mimer Berserker, should these two meet, it would only do the same damage as an AC 20, or 20 damage. And should you remove triple shaded Mimer off the play, things tend to go a lot more farther down. This, even when not fighting against other dedicated melee mechs, is still a major boon, as it since halves all melee damage. It means even should it get punched or even kicked, even that would be reduced. This also gives it added protection against other brand new mechs which seek to upend its title as the melee king, like the Kantio. But the biggest boon for this one would be its 4 jump jets. That's right, jump jets. As at long last, this mech can finally fly into the sky just like its siblings, the Hatchetman and Axman. The Berserker can once and for all finally truly excel in its native environment. This means that while many may laugh at the Berserker in city environments, at least when there are buildings in the way, for they would never dare to do that if the Berserker is in sprinting range of them. But now, at long last, it can finally jump over buildings. It can finally surprise its foes, giving it a much needed advantage in an environment it should, and now does, fully excel at. For weaponry, it's only given 4 ER medium lasers, with 2 of them being stripped out. However, these medium lasers are clan grade, which does increase its damage. Additionally, a bombast laser would be installed in the left arm in place of the traditional ER PPC. The bombast laser does have some decent damage, some decent range. The bombast laser was an attempt to create the ultimate energy weapon that does not weigh too much. It may weigh as much as a PPC, but it does have a major accuracy problem, mainly due to the fact that in order to make it this strong while not weighing too much, they had to heavily cut out its charging mechanism. Thus, the creators who made the bombast laser, in an attempt to make the slow charge time a feature, would allow the user to fire at multiple different settings, or pre-fire it before it's fully charged. In tabletop terms, this means that the bombast laser at its max setting can be fired for 12 damage for 12 heat, but it can also be set to its lowest setting of 7 damage for 7 heat, and everything in between, of course. While the accuracy for the bombast laser is questionable, it does allow the user more control when managing the heat level of the Berserker, allowing it to more easily heat up and maintain it without being terribly finicky. It also helps because, again, it has 4 jump jets, which do generate full heat on a full jump. But one more change for this Berserker would be the fact that its AMS and ammo would be removed. Its ECM, traditionally in the right torso, would be moved over to the center torso and upgraded to an Angel ECM. Angel ECM acts just like its standard counterpart, with the exception that Angel ECM also disables the special abilities of Streak missiles. While Streaks maintain their special ability of, if they do not get a hit, they will not fire, they do ever lose their ability of all of them hitting. Thus, should a Streak missile be fired at this mech, they will have to roll in the cluster hits table, as all missiles will not hit due to the Angel ECM. In conclusion, for the D4, this is arguably the best Berserker, mostly due to its jump jets. While the lack of AMS can sometimes hurt, sacrifices must be made for those jump jets. But I feel those jump jets are truly one of the biggest game-changing things this mech has ever had, besides its triple strength armor. While the impact resistant armor may be situational, and its fact that it weighs a lot more may also turn some people away, but since this thing is supposed to engage in melee combat, this is still a major boon, as it will take hits from other mechs when it engages, whether it be through punching or kicking. Or heaven forbid, it's another Berserker, and those two titans are clashing against each other. Regardless, the D4 model of the Berserker is truly the king of the battlefield, and is one of the biggest monsters, especially in urban environments, where this thing will tear its opponents limb from limb. Only time will tell if this Berserker, whether this model or the other models, will make more prominent appearances. As of now, the only way to get a Berserker would be through Iron Wind medals. Though that model can sometimes be a bit derpy, it is still a fantastic mech, and hopefully Callus will finally get off their butts and make a Berserker model because this is an awesome mech. They need to do that. Regardless, hopefully there will be many stories left for the Berserker, and maybe we might get more models. And if we do, they all must maintain the jump jets. All Berserker models from now on must have jump jets. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is what I wish to say about the Berserker. I still love this mech, and hopefully you guys may be interested in playing this too. Hopefully, if you have, you'll share your thoughts and stories about this in the comments. To Battletech, though I have had prior exposure thanks to my father's old Dark Age miniatures and his Aurora class dropship, and to making videos too. In fact, as of now, all of these recordings I've done so far are solely fly by the wire, let's see what happens, no script. Depending on what happens, I may or may not end up start writing scripts in the future, but as of now, all videos will maintain the same format of I just do whatever and hope it turns out well. So thank you all for watching. Hope you have a good day and keep making this place a slightly better place today and tomorrow. Goodbye everyone.